At our anniversary dinner, my wife stood with her friends, holding divorce papers. "To her new love!" They cheered as she slipped an arm around her love. I signed, quietly, thanked them all, and then did something that turned their cheers into stunned silence. I remember standing in front of the mirror at 7:30 p.m., adjusting the cufflinks on my vest. It was the same mirror where I had straightened my tie 5 years ago, the night I asked Serena to marry me. The reflection staring back now, though, was different. The suit was sharp, the tie straight. The gold ring was still securely fastened on my finger, but the man inside the suit was older and infinitely more worn. I touched the photograph tucked into my wallet, the one from our engagement party. Her radiant smile, my nervous grin. That night had been full of genuine, open possibilities. I had convinced myself, in the quiet desperation of the last 6 months, that tonight, our 5th anniversary, would be the same. I was operating on a fragile, self-constructed hope that tonight, we would remember who we were at the beginning. I sighed and straightened my shirt collar one last time. Serena was always late, always had some vague, overwhelming project or excuse. 5 years of marriage had taught me patience, or perhaps tolerance for her work stress. Yet, tonight was supposed to be special. This was the Langley, the restaurant where I had proposed, the place we were supposed to reconnect. I should have known better than to trust the sentimentality of a ticking time bomb. Arriving at the Langley, I was greeted by the usual warm, golden light and the smell of expensive French wine. The hostess, recognizing me instantly, guided me to our usual corner table by the window. As I sat, the room felt different, cold, despite the glow. I ordered a glass of chilled, crisp white wine and waited, watching other couples. They were laughing, holding hands, whispering sweet, simple things. That used to be us. 20 minutes passed. My wine was already warm by the time she walked in. Serena looked breathtaking, of course, but the air around her carried a distinct chill. She wasn't alone. Her best friends, Ethan and Jared, trailed behind her, their smiles unnervingly wide. And then there was Laya, her long-term assistant, the one Serena always introduced as my indispensable secretary at corporate functions. Laya wore a tight, vivid red dress that seemed designed to steal the light and make a bold statement. Serena's eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, then darted away, her lips tightening into a smile I didn't recognize. She sat across from me, speaking no word of apology for her lateness. Ethan and Jared pulled up extra chairs, as if this were a boisterous social gathering, not an intimate anniversary dinner. I was the invisible man at my own table. "So glad you could join us, Matt," Ethan announced, raising his water glass with an insincere grin. Jared let out a loud, boisterous laugh that felt utterly suffocating. I said nothing. I simply watched Serena. Her hand rested on her lap, her fingers twitching with what I recognized as tension, not nervousness. She didn't want to be here. Neither did I. Then, without warning, she slid a thick, heavy manila envelope across the linen tabletop. It hit the wood with a soft, decisive thud, the way a thing settles after being dropped too quickly. My eyes flicked from the envelope to her face, where the false smile was already fading. "It's for you," she said, her voice colder than the champagne she hadn't yet ordered. I stared at the thick object. My mind raced, constructing every possible scenario, but my hands remained still. Dread, heavy and metallic, began to creep up my spine. I opened it slowly. Divorce papers. The words blurred and sharpened as I read them, trying to parse the surreal moment unfolding in the bustling restaurant. Was this real? Serena. What is this? I whispered, my voice barely carrying above the clamor of the dining room. I wasn't asking for information. I was asking for the truth, for the lie she had spent months building. She offered a faint, icy smile that didn't touch her eyes. "It's your freedom, baby," she said. The words sliced deeper than any shout. The room temperature seemed to drop a full 10 degrees. Ethan instantly raised his glass again, shouting a cheer to Matt's new beginning. Jared grinned and chimed in, "To the woman who actually deserves him." They clinked their glasses, their laughter ringing in my ears like 1,000 small, sharp daggers. My world was imploding publicly. I sat frozen, watching the people I had trusted and even loved celebrate my annihilation. Ethan, whom I'd helped launch his company. Jared, whose wedding I'd paid for. Ethan leaned forward, his face full of condescension. "Don't look so sad, Matt," he sneered. "You'll find someone eventually. Someone warrior speed." The words felt like a punch to the sternum. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to flip the table, and make them all feel the seismic pain I was feeling. But I didn't. I stayed perfectly still. I felt the familiar burn of my childhood wound, the fear of losing all control, all stability. I would not give them the reaction they craved. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the fine silver pen they had so thoughtfully placed beside the documents. "You want me to sign these?" I asked quietly, my voice calm, betraying nothing of the raging storm inside me. "Right here. Right now." Serena's eyes, full of triumph moments before, flickered with uncertainty. That quiet compliance was not what she had anticipated. I saw Laya, sitting slightly apart, lower her head in what looked like shame. I signed. I signed because, in that moment, there was no fight left in that specific war. I had to let this one go. I handed the papers back, my hand steady now, as if this had been my plan all along. "Thank you," I said, standing slowly. My eyes met each of theirs, and I forced a small, unsettling smile. "Thank you all for making this so much easier than I expected." Ethan and Jared stopped laughing. Serena's smirk completely vanished, replaced by confusion and the slightest hint of unease. My composure was the weapon they didn't anticipate. I turned and walked away, not before catching the genuine flash of surprise in Serena's eyes. She expected weeping, begging, a fight. She did not expect the icy, tactical withdrawal. I stepped outside into the crisp night air, my breath fogging. My mind was numb, yet something inside me had shifted. This wasn't the end of my life. This was the final, brutal end of the lie I had been living. The battle for my dignity was about to begin. I just needed one asset. And she had left it behind. The ride home was silent. The city lights flashed past the taxi window, but all I could see were the damning words on those signed papers. It felt less like a loss, and more like a limb being cleanly amputated. Numbness was a shield, but beneath it, a focused heat began to build. The taxi dropped me off, in front of the apartment complex that had been my home, the stronghold of my life, but which now felt like a gilded cage. Serena was certainly gone, probably already celebrating her tactical victory with Laya and her loyal followers. I was alone, yet I was not truly unarmed. I still had the one piece of evidence she had carelessly left behind. I stepped into the apartment. The silence here was thick and accusatory. My hand reached instinctively for the kitchen counter where I had seen it earlier. Serena's phone. I hadn't planned on this. Prying wasn't my style. My entire life had been built on honesty and respect for personal boundaries. But the sheer calculated cruelty of the evening had obliterated all boundaries, all previous rules of engagement. Something cold and logical within me demanded to know the truth, the full, ugly picture. The lie that had just cost me 5 years of my life and half my assets was buried inside this device. And I would not stop until I excavated every detail. My fingers trembled slightly as I unlocked the screen. There was no password, another sign of her arrogance and belief that I was too controlled, too trusting to look. I scrolled through her messages, my breath catching in my throat, and there it was. Long, intimate threads between Serena and Laya, stretching back months. I can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Same hotel as always. Last night was incredible. I love you so much. When are you going to tell him? I'm tired of hiding. My stomach churned, a violent physical reaction to the words that were burning themselves into my brain. It wasn't just a quick, careless affair. It was a calculated, deep-seated betrayal. The woman I had trusted, the woman who had shared my name, had been lying, building a secondary life with her assistant. Laya wasn't just a pawn, she was a co-conspirator in a long-term emotional fraud. I scrolled further, unable to stop myself, needing to document the entirety of the betrayal. Each message was more damning than the last. There were pictures of them together, in places I didn't recognize, doing things I didn't want to imagine. My hand started shaking violently as I realized I was facing not just a broken marriage, but a meticulously constructed plot. This wasn't merely a private tragedy, it was a matter of professional survival. They were trying to take everything: my home, my money, and my dignity. I would not let them succeed. I slammed the phone face down onto the kitchen counter, taking ragged, gasping breaths. But before I could even formulate a rational plan, something else caught my attention. My laptop, still open on my desk, had a flashing light. A new email. It was from the bank. Alert. Suspicious activity detected on your account. My heart seized. I forced myself to open the email. What I saw next made the betrayal of the affair feel trivial in comparison. There were multiple, significant transactions. Large funds were being drained from our joint account through a series of almost insignificant, small withdrawals over the last 6 months. But the total was staggering. The withdrawals were linked to a company called Red Harbor Project, a name I had never encountered. And the name attached to the transfers: Jared. The pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity. Jared, the one who was just sitting at the table, toasting her new love. They were robbing me blind. They had been draining my life savings while they played the roles of loving wife and concerned friends. My entire existence had been treated as an asset to be liquidated. I couldn't let this go. I had to act, and I had to act immediately, before they emptied the accounts completely and vanished into Evelyn's shadow network. I grabbed my personal phone and, fighting to keep my voice steady, dialed the number I knew by heart. Marcus Reed, I said, the words coming out clipped and controlled. I need to talk to you now. The phone rang twice before Marcus, my long-time family lawyer, answered. Matt, what's going on? It's nearly 11. I have everything I need, Marcus, I stated, the icy certainty in my chest outweighing the lingering shock. The betrayal is personal, but the crime is corporate. It's time to make them pay. The line had been drawn, not with divorce papers, but with forged signatures and stolen funds. The battle had officially begun. The next morning, I sat across from Marcus Reed in a small, quiet coffee shop far from the financial district. The steam from my forgotten coffee curled into the air, but my mind was too occupied with the scale of the destruction Serena had wrought. Marcus was the only lawyer I trusted. He had been our family counsel for years, privy to the quiet history of my marriage and the intricacies of my professional life. He knew the inner workings of everything that mattered. But today he looked at me with a profound wariness, the kind that only exposure to deep, calculated betrayal can instill. "What's going on, Matt?" he asked, leaning in over the small table. "You said you had something big. Something that goes beyond the papers you signed. I need to know what I'm walking into here." I slid the encrypted USB drive across the table to him. On it was a digital copy of every screenshot from Serena's phone, the bank statements detailing the withdrawals, and the initial notes on the Red Harbor connection. "Everything is on here," I told him, my voice low and steady. "The messages, the bank statements, the evidence of forgery. It's all there, Marcus. It's not just a messy divorce. It's a targeted financial attack." He inserted the USB into his laptop and began scrolling through the files. His face, usually placid and professional, grew serious with each passing minute. "Forgery," he muttered under his breath, reading the bank logs. "Dissipation of marital assets. And this Red Harbor, possibly money laundering. This isn't Serena acting alone, Matt. The technical complexity suggests an architect." I nodded, my hands gripping the thick ceramic coffee cup tightly. "It's Evelyn. Her mother. I'm almost certain she's the one pulling the corporate strings." "What can we do with this now?" I asked, the urgency in my chest growing unbearable. Marcus didn't look up from the screen immediately. "We could freeze your assets immediately. Stop any further withdrawals. We could file for a temporary restraining order against them. But if we do this too soon, before we have definitive proof of the criminal elements, the media will catch wind of it. You'll be left looking like the scorned husband who lost control, trying to weaponize the law. You need to be absolutely sure you have everything in place before you take this public." He paused, running a hand through his thin, graying hair. "You need more evidence, Matt. We can't go to court with just suspicion and screenshots from a stolen phone. We need to catch them in the act, confirming their scheme." Later that day, I found myself standing outside the corporate monolith of KMA, Blake, and Bright Moto, one of Chicago's top marketing firms. This was Serena's domain, the place where the professional plotting was undoubtedly taking place. I was here under the guise of checking in on a potential new client. But the reality was far more important and far more clandestine. I had meticulously scouted the layout of the office days ago. I knew where the executive private conference rooms were, and I knew exactly how to slip in and out undetected. My plan was simple. I was going to plant a small, highly discreet audio recording device in one of the rooms where I knew Serena and her inner circle, Jared, Ethan, and likely Evelyn, often held closed-door meetings. It wasn't their business plans I was interested in. It was the real deal. The conversations where they mapped out my downfall. I slipped into the building during the hectic mid-morning rush, easily blending with the foot traffic. I navigated the labyrinthine hallways and made my way to the meeting room where I knew they had met before. The room was, thankfully, empty. My heart pounded, a heavy dull drumbeat against my ribs. I quickly set up the miniature device underneath the heavy conference table, ensuring it was hidden from every angle and fully activated. It was a crude maneuver, perhaps, but it was enough to capture what I needed. As I left the area, I saw Ethan walking down the hallway toward me. He spotted me and offered a swift, utterly dismissive nod. I returned the gesture, keeping my face neutral. betraying none of the absolute contempt I felt inside. He had no idea what was ticking under the table, just 50 feet from where he stood. That evening, I found myself sitting alone at a dimly lit bar, nursing a whiskey. A familiar face approached me with a calm, almost predatory smile. Noah. A former colleague of Serena's, who had recently been passed over for a promotion she secured. He was the type of person who always seemed to appear when you least expected it, a self-proclaimed hero of the overlooked. Hey, Matt. I heard about what's going on. You holding up okay? Noah asked, sliding onto the stool across from me. I took a long sip of the smoky liquor. I'm fine. Just trying to put the pieces together. Noah scanned the room, his eyes darting quickly. Look, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I'm here, if you need anything. I still have some access to their internal data, if you know what I mean. I could help you get something solid. I raised an eyebrow, suspicion instantly overriding gratitude. This was too easy, too convenient. What's the catch, Noah? He chuckled nervously, adjusting his collar. No catch, Matt. Just I owe Serena a professional favor. But I truly don't want to see you get screwed over by Evelyn. It is bad business. I could help you expose this. I stared at him, trying to gauge his sincerity against my deep-seated aversion to relying on external sources. My lie, control is survival, was being challenged. I had to let someone else in. All right. What do you have? He slid a small, generic flash drive across the table. This contains some emails and logs. Stuff that ties Serena to an offshore account she's been using to divert funds. It's all there. I've been keeping an eye on things, and I didn't like what I saw. But you didn't hear this from me. I took the drive, my fingers brushing his briefly. Thanks. Noah. As he stood to leave, something lingered in the air. I couldn't shake the unnerving feeling that Noah was, in some capacity, playing both sides. Was I being helped, or was he just another, more complicated pawn in Evelyn's larger, twisted game? I didn't know, but the evidence was too important to discard over a feeling. I had 3 new assets: Marcus's knowledge, the active recorder, and Noah's flash drive. The war chest was filling up. A few days after receiving Noah's dubious gift, I found myself in a position I never anticipated. Following my estranged wife's assistant, Leia had been distant during a large corporate party I attended, almost too quiet, her nervousness palpable even from across the room. I caught up with her on the sidewalk as she was unlocking her car door. Leia, wait. She froze, her eyes wide, glistening with unshed tears. Matt, I don't want this. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. You have to understand. Serena is different now. She's not the woman you married. She's too far gone. Her voice cracked, and for a fleeting second, I saw genuine, raw guilt in her expression. It was the first true emotion I had seen from anyone in their circle since the divorce papers were slid across the table. What's going on, Leia? I asked, stepping closer, keeping my tone level. I knew she was scared, and pressure would only make her shut down. Tell me the truth. I deserve to know the real stakes. I saw the financial records, she whispered, glancing frantically up and down the street. I saw how much money they've been taking. And I'm scared. If I don't help them, Evelyn will. She'll do something worse. She's already threatening me. The mention of Evelyn confirmed everything. Serena was the face, but her mother was the true architect, the force controlling the theft. I felt a sharp pang of sympathy for Leia. She was trapped, cornered, just as I had been. But sympathy could not compromise my objective. What are you going to do? Leia looked up at me, the tears finally overflowing. I don't know. But I'm not gonna let you be completely ruined by their plan. I'm sorry, Matt. I truly am. Before I could press her for details, she turned, slid into her car, and sped away, leaving me standing on the cold curb, with more questions about Evelyn's specific threats than answers. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk, the flash drive from Noah plugged into my laptop. The emails and logs detailed a shocking trail of money being routed through various shell companies, perfectly aligning with the initial Red Harbor withdrawals. It was the confirmation I needed to understand the scale of the operation. This wasn't about a settlement. It was about laundering my capital through a criminal pipeline. Then, the true horror landed. An email notification popped up, its subject line jarringly specific: Finalize Langley Plan. The attached file was titled, Guest List Final. V3 PDF. I opened the email and scanned the short document. My blood ran cold as I read the chilling final lines. This is how we handle him. Make sure the video is ready. It was signed with a single initial E. I stared at the screen, the weight of the revelation crashing down on me. This wasn't just bigger than the marriage. It was bigger than the divorce. They had planned the entire ambush, the entire public spectacle, with the clear intent to humiliate and destroy me, not just divorce me. And they had video footage prepared, ready to weaponize. It was now brutally, viscerally personal. They were not just taking my money. They were attempting to assassinate my character. I spent the next hour documenting every line, every transaction, every forged signature contained within Noah's logs. $50,000 here, $100,000 there. These weren't small amounts. These were sums that could bring down companies and ruin careers. My career. As I meticulously documented each step of the analysis, my mind drifted back to Serena's face at the Langley. That beautiful, cold smile now twisted in my memory into something entirely calculated. Marcus was wrapped. The more I uncovered, the more I realized my survival depended not on proving their adultery, but on exposing their corporate crime. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus again. We need to file a counterpetition immediately, I said, my voice steady despite the tension. I was about to call you, Marcus replied, his voice strained. Serena has a plan, and she's already preparing her case to make you look like the villain. If she files first, you lose. She controls the narrative. I need a little more time. I need to gather everything. There is still more to the financial trail. You don't have much time, Matt. If this goes public before we strike, it could ruin your reputation permanently. You need to strike before she does, or you lose the element of surprise entirely. That evening, I followed Serena's movements. She left her apartment, dressed elaborately, heading toward the same luxurious downtown hotel, where the messages between her and Leia indicated they often met. I had no intention of confronting her. Instead, I shadowed her, waiting for the cover of a brief moment of distraction. Inside the opulent hotel, I quietly slipped into the specific room Serena had entered. She and Leia were momentarily separated, and I quickly set up a small, secondary audio recorder beneath the heavy coffee table. I had done this once before in my life, during a hostile corporate takeover, where information was life. I knew how to operate undetected, how to become invisible. As I sat barely noticeable in the corner, I heard Serena and Leia talking. Their conversation was clipped and controlled, but Leia's fear was evident. She's going to do it, Serena said, her tone matter of fact, utterly devoid of warmth. The final plan is in motion. It's time for him to sign those last papers, to accept his fate. We'll have him exactly where we want him. Laya's voice trembled as she replied. Are you sure about this, Serena? I don't know if I can keep helping. I'm not sure I can handle what Evelyn might do. Don't worry about it. Serena snapped, an edge of genuine cruelty entering her voice. Evelyn wants this. She's the one pulling the strings now. If you don't help me, I'll make sure she knows you've been talking. Do you really want to find out what happens then? A chill ran down my spine. Laya wasn't just a willing participant, she was trapped, threatened, and completely cornered. And Evelyn, the architect of the whole operation, was not just financially motivated, but vindictive. The manipulation ran deeper than I had ever imagined, fueled by a desire for total destruction. The game had officially evolved from a private divorce to a full-scale corporate and criminal conspiracy. I had to move, and I had to move now. The restraining order notification hit first. I was dentilously cross, referencing the forged signatures on the transferred documents with older bank records, when an email notification popped up. It wasn't from Marcus. It was a legal document waiting for me. A notice of temporary restraining order. The allegations were clearly laid out, designed to inflict maximum professional and personal damage. I was accused of harassment, of stalking Serena, and of aggressive behavior both at the Langley and at her corporate office. This wasn't a tactic for leverage. It was a scorched earth strategy. If this restraining order was granted, I would immediately lose all access to our shared assets, be legally barred from communication, and, most damningly, my reputation, the foundation of my entire professional career, would be permanently tarnished. It was exactly the public humiliation Evelyn and Serena wanted. I could hear Marcus's voice echoing in my mind. If she files first, you lose the narrative. My phone rang almost instantly. It was Marcus. Matt, they've filed it. Marcus's voice was urgent, tight with stress. It's bad. They've attached video evidence to the motion. I froze, the blood draining from my face. Video. What video? It's doctored. He confirmed, his voice dropping low. It's footage from the restaurant, the night you signed the papers. They've edited and twisted it to make it look like you were abusive, aggressive, cornering her. They've used your silence against you. Serena had prepared this. She hadn't simply reacted to the divorce, she had planned the aftermath, securing the false evidence before she ever presented the papers. The weight of her malice, the willingness to lie under oath and manipulate the law, crashed down on me. I sat down heavily, the restraining order notice rattling in my hand. You have to fight back, Matt, Marcus insisted. But you must do it wisely. You can't afford to make any more mistakes. We need to file the counter petition, detailing the fraud, the money laundering, the conspiracy. We need to tell the real story first. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for the hearing to destroy me. I couldn't afford to. I made a firm decision then, and there I would go on the offensive. But I needed one last piece of ironclad. Real, time proof. I grabbed the sophisticated recording equipment I had purchased weeks ago. I waited until I knew Serena was in a long meeting with Jared and Ethan at the office, using the opportunity to move before she could. I drove to the secure garage where she kept her car. I slipped in, found her vehicle, and quickly installed a small, sensitive audio recorder deep beneath the driver's seat. It wasn't much, but it was enough to capture candid conversations away from the corporate office's shielded meeting rooms. Afterward, I met with Marcus again. bringing the newly filed temporary restraining order. "I'm ready to file the counter petition now," I told him. "But I want to load it with everything we have. The bank statements, the Red Harbor connection, the communications from Laya, and the evidence of the forged signatures. This isn't a defensive move, Marcus. This is a missile strike." Marcus looked relieved, but still cautious. "It's the right move, Matt. But once we file, the war becomes public. There's no taking it back. Serena, Evelyn, and Red Harbor will know we've found the wire. And their reaction will be aggressive. You need to be prepared for the fallout." I was prepared for divorce. I countered, the controlled fury tightening my jaw. I was not prepared for theft and defamation. I will not allow them to destroy my life based on a staged video and lies. File it. As I walked out of Marcus's office building and headed back to the apartment, the tension was suffocating. I felt exposed, having given up the control I had cherished, allowing Noah into the data, trusting Marcus with the strategy, and counting on Laya's possible intervention. The filing was imminent, and the silence of my enemies felt less like defeat and more like the heavy, calculated calm before a detonation. I knew the moment those papers hit the clerk's desk, I would become their primary target. My strategy of quiet investigation was over. The violence was about to begin. The days following the filing of our counter petition were a blur of legal preparation. The trial date for the restraining order hearing was set, and the quiet war had officially erupted into public view. Serena's legal team, clearly working with Evelyn's corporate machine, launched an aggressive media campaign attempting to frame me as unstable and abusive. Leveraging the doctored video. One afternoon, a crucial encrypted email arrived. The subject line was simply, "The car." It contained the first major playback file from the recording device I had planted in Serena's vehicle. It was a conversation between Ethan and Serena, and it was devastatingly damning. They were discussing the timing of the financial transfers, and more critically, the fabrication of my signature on the initial investment documents. The documents were fake from the start. Serena's voice whispered on the recording. Why had Jared forged Matt's signature weeks before the Langley dinner? The divorce papers were just cover for the money movement. The sheer premeditation confirmed the financial fraud was the primary objective, not just a side benefit of a personal betrayal. Later that day, as I walked through the financial district, I received a text from Leia. "Matt, please listen to me. Evelyn is going to do something if you push too hard. I can't be involved anymore. I'm so sorry." The text confirmed my mounting suspicion. Leia was not just a trapped lover, she was a desperate witness. And Evelyn was taking preemptive action. That night, the abstract threat materialized into physical danger. I was sitting at my kitchen counter, reviewing Marcus's notes on the Red Harbor scheme, when I heard a distinct sound at my apartment door. Not a knock, but the soft, metallic click of a lock being bypassed. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I was alone. The door swung inward silently, and a figure, large and masked, stepped into the living room. The attack was swift, brutal, and silent. He moved directly toward me, not to rob, but to subdue. I fought back, fueled by pure adrenaline and the desperate knowledge that this was not a mugging. This was Evelyn's final attempt to stop the counter petition. We struggled violently across the floor. He was stronger, but I was faster, driven by the absolute terror of losing control entirely. My deepest, oldest wound. In the chaos of the fight, as I ducked a heavy blow, he lost his footing. I slammed him against the wall, and in the instant he fell back, I heard a small object clatter onto the hardwood. The attacker recovered quickly, scrambling back to his feet, but seeing the brief window of escape, he fled out the door as quickly as he arrived. I lay there for a moment, chest heaving, listening to the silence return. My body ached. But the damage was mostly superficial. I dragged myself up and looked at the spot where he had fallen. There, shining dully under the lamp light, was a keychain. It was stamped with a distinct, stylized logo, a crimson anchor over a navy field. The logo of Red Harbor. This wasn't just about Serena's fraud anymore. This was a direct, violent attempt by a large criminal network to protect its assets and cover its tracks. Evelyn had ordered a physical assault. My fight had just escalated from a legal war to a matter of life and death. The assault was a direct challenge to my need for control. They were forcing me into powerlessness. I grabbed the keychain, my hand shaking with a mixture of rage and terror. I had the evidence. I had the recordings. I had everything I needed to expose them all. It was time to take the final, public step, but I knew the stakes had never been higher. I immediately called Marcus, my voice tense and low. It's bigger than I thought. Evelyn is behind physical attacks now. I have proof linking the assailant to Red Harbor. We need to move. Now. Marcus responded with calm urgency. We need to move. We'll hit them where it hurts, publicly, in the courtroom, but you must watch your back. Matt, they are cornered. As I walked through the apartment, checking the windows and the locks, my phone buzzed again. A new, encrypted email from Marcus. The subject was just 3 words. They know everything. I stopped dead in the hallway. I wasn't alone anymore. I was hunted. This war was far from over. But the climax was finally in sight. The evening before the final confrontation felt like the calm before a financial hurricane. I sat in my apartment. The weight of the forged documents, the bank statements, and the Red Harbor keychain pressing down on me. Tomorrow was the day I would face Serena, Evelyn, and the people who had conspired to steal not just my marriage, but my entire future. It was my moment to take back control, to expose them all for what they truly were. I had been preparing for weeks, collecting every piece of evidence, every whisper, every deceit. As I reviewed the documents Marcus and I had gathered, the signatures forged on documents I hadn't authorized, the evidence of money siphoned through Jared and Red Harbor. It felt like the longest night of my life. I couldn't allow them to win this, to justify their violence and theft with a staged divorce. I stood up, adjusting the jacket that still concealed the faint bruises from the attack. This place, this life had been built on trust, but now it felt built on the sharp, volatile edge of a knife. If there's one time I have to get this right, I muttered to myself, it's now. I packed the documents carefully into a briefcase, checking everything, ensuring there were no mistakes. I couldn't afford to falter. I arrived at the Langley early. The familiar warm lighting of the restaurant greeted me, but the air felt charged. I was anxious, but resolved. I took a seat at our usual table by the window, the table where Serena and I had once shared genuine dreams. Now, every memory felt tainted by the slow, burning fire of her betrayal. Serena walked in precisely on time, accompanied by her full entourage Ethan, Jared, and her mother, Evelyn. Serena wore a fixed confidence I hadn't seen before, but beneath it, I detected the subtle, almost imperceptible tension in her shoulders. Her eyes were colder than ice when they finally settled on me. I remained seated, watching as they took their places. The silence stretched. Ethan and Jared laughed too loudly, making hollow, casual small talk while Serena and Evelyn remained eerily quiet. I took a long sip of water, trying to maintain the absolute calm of the strategist. Then, Serena repeated the gesture that had initiated the war. She placed an envelope on the table. It was the same thick manila size, the same heavy weight that had been my undoing just a few weeks ago. "This is it, Matt," Serena said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "We end this tonight. Sign the final waivers." I didn't say a word at first. I just stared at the envelope. Ethan raised his glass, his tone triumphant, utterly convinced of victory. "To new beginnings," he cheered, looking at Serena as if she were a conquering queen. Jared joined in the empty ritual. I stayed calm, watching Serena's gaze. For a brief moment, her eyes flickered. Not with triumph, but with genuine fear. Fear that maybe, just maybe, she had miscalculated my silence. "You thought I wouldn't know," I said quietly, standing up slowly. I pulled the USB containing the recorded conversations from my inner jacket pocket and placed it squarely on the table, next to the envelope. I then slid out the counter petition and the criminal complaint I had filed yesterday. "You thought you'd have me cornered, didn't you?" Serena's facade cracked for a fraction of a second. "What is this?" she asked, her voice wavering, no longer entirely steady. "These are my divorce papers, Serena. Filed just yesterday," I explained, my voice a low, controlled current. "And this." I gestured to the documents detailing the Red Harbor transfers. "Is proof that you and your mother have been forging my signature, draining my accounts, and manipulating this entire scheme. The game is over." The room went completely silent. My words, backed by the undeniable weight of the evidence I had produced, hung in the air like a physical force. Marcus had come through. He had organized the evidence perfectly for this moment. Then, as if on cue, Marcus walked into the room, a leather briefcase in hand. He walked straight to the table and placed it directly in front of me, opening it to reveal the final, official, legally verified blow. "We've gathered everything," Marcus said, his voice authoritative. "From the electronic evidence of your forged signatures, to the financial manipulation, to the conspiracy to defraud. We have it all, Serena." Serena's face was bloodless. The realization hit her fully. She had been outsmarted. She had been too confident, too arrogant, assuming I would simply roll over as the victim they had painted. "This isn't over," I said, turning my focus to the real power in the room. "You underestimated me, Serena. And you desperately underestimated the reach of your mother's operation." I turned to Evelyn, addressing the architect directly for the first time. "Evelyn, you're not going to walk away from this either. You thought you could hide your tracks with Red Harbor, but you didn't. I have everything on you, the Red Harbor connections, the illegal financial dealings, and the proof you ordered the physical assault. It ends here." Evelyn's face twisted in stark, uncontrolled panic, but she remained silent. I pressed further. "You've been laundering money, covering up Serena's mess, using your position to manipulate everything. The investigation begins now." Serena and Evelyn exchanged a look of pure, cornered terror. The walls were closing in, and they knew it. Then, a miracle happened. Laya stepped forward. She had been silent, observing the rapid collapse of their scheme, but now she spoke, her voice shaky but clear. I didn't want this," Laya confessed. "I was forced into it. I've seen the evidence, and I can't keep helping her. It's not right." Laya's confession was the last, unexpected piece of the puzzle. Serena hadn't just betrayed me, She had coerced and threatened the one person she claimed to love. Leah reached into her bag and handed me a small, unmarked USB drive. This is the final proof. Unedited video files, emails between Serena and her team showing the full extent of the plan to ruin you. I am done. This was it. The absolute, undeniable end of the legal war. You think this is over, Serena? I asked, turning back to her for the last time. You think I'll just sign your papers and walk away? Her eyes flickered with genuine uncertainty. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She knew she had lost. And in that moment, I felt a rush of vindication. I had won. But before I could leave, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I answered it anyway. Matt? A cold, electronically distorted voice said, cutting through the stunned silence of the restaurant. We've been watching you. Don't think this is over. My heart skipped a beat. I looked at Serena and Evelyn, their pale faces reflecting my own shock. Realizing that something much, much bigger than Evelyn's scheme was at play here. Something I was not prepared for. The battle was won, but the war was still raging, and I was now a known enemy. Weeks passed. The sensational climax at the Langley had shattered the corporate silence around Evelyn and Serena, forcing the legal system to address the criminal fraud. The trial was the culmination of everything I had fought for. A final day where the truth would be laid bare for everyone to see, not just in a private restaurant, but in a public court of law. I walked into the family court with Marcus by my side, a quiet, almost unsettling determination replacing the raw anxiety. The courtroom was tense, filled with reporters and curious onlookers, but I was ready. The judge looked at the mountain of evidence with a scrutinizing eye, flipping through the files as Marcus presented our case. The emails, the audio recordings from the car, the forged signatures, the financial fraud linked to Red Harbor. It was all there, meticulously documented. Serena and Evelyn, sitting across the aisle, could no longer deny the vast network of deceit. The temporary restraining order filed against me was instantly dismissed and sealed. Marcus had strategically used Leah's confession and the overwhelming evidence of the conspiracy to not only defend me, but to put Evelyn and Serena on the defensive for criminal charges. The process was slow, bureaucratic, and deeply unsatisfying on a personal level, but legally, we won. Evelyn was formally indicted for major financial crimes related to Red Harbor, and Serena faced severe consequences for fraud and the dissipation of marital assets. I had reclaimed my assets and, more importantly, my reputation. The core lie that had fueled my life, control is survival, was finally broken. I had survived the worst attempt to destroy me, not by controlling every variable, but by trusting Marcus with the law and Leah with the truth. I had given up control, and in doing so, I had gained everything. As I walked out of the courtroom, the cool autumn air felt different. I was free. I paused on the courthouse steps, watching the reporters chase after Marcus. The weight of the fight was lifting, leaving behind not elation, but a hollow, profound exhaustion. I had won the legal battle, secured the divorce, and exposed the conspiracy. But the price had been 5 years of my life, and a physical toll I was still calculating. Then, the final, terrifying piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My personal phone, which I had almost forgotten existed in the crush of the legal battle, rang. The number was unfamiliar, masked by an electronic obfuscation service. I hesitated, then answered it. Matt. The cold, synthesized voice said. It was the same voice from the hotel parking lot, the one that had warned me after the final confrontation at the Langley. We've been watching you. You took down Evelyn, But she was just a local manager. Don't think this is over. My blood ran cold. The victory felt thin, instantly invalidated. I gripped the phone, staring blankly at the busy street. Red Harbor is vast. You exposed one cell. You proved your cleverness. But you also proved yourself a threat. Now, you are our new target. Your file has been escalated. I hung up without responding, my gaze sweeping the street, searching for eyes, for a parked car, for anything that didn't belong. The corporate monster was bigger, deeper, and more organized than I had imagined. Evelyn and Serena were just one tentacle of a sprawling, dangerous entity. I had healed the wound of feeling powerless by fighting back. I had learned the truth about vulnerability and strength. But in winning the battle against my wife, I had inadvertently entered a full-scale war against a high-level criminal organization. I was a man who craved control, now facing an enemy who operated entirely in the shadows. I was free from Serena, but I was now hunted by Red Harbor. The final page of this chapter was simply the first page of a much larger, darker conflict. I took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of my jacket, and started walking. The war was just beginning.